Oh, now we're back to recording. Got it.
Yes. So maybe I forgot to record. I missed the whole little old lady shtick, and I'm very sad to say that. I was,
But something is wrong again. It's me.
can you,
Fuck, fuck,
can,
fuck, a fuck, a fuck. Fuck, fuck, fuck.
can you still hear me?
I see moving. Now I can.
Okay.
Oh, and we recorded that. Me
Yeah.
saying fuck, fuck, fucky, fuck, 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 fuck. That's
Well,
a
I'm gonna send you that so that Barbara can just use it as a GIF when people annoy her. So, um, it's okay. I can edit that out too. So, no, I was saying the vaudeville. I was just talking to a young man who's well, not a former student, but a student who went to the school, and he just has that spirit of vaudeville thing as well. And I feel like that's a personality trait I look for in people is that you must have a little vaudeville in your soul for me to be friends with you. And you know what I mean? It's like you have to appreciate a shtick. You have to like be able to appreciate, I don't know. It's a little cat skills maybe.
slapstick.
Yeah,
Slapstick is at the heart of my work.
yes. Um, and I feel like I'm notoriously unfunny, except that I love people who are comedians. So I joke that I married my wife because she makes me laugh. The gender didn't matter, but she will do the dumbest things just to stop me from being my serious self. So we all need people to, offset our thing. Um, no, half the time when people think I'm funny, I'm usually being deadly serious. So I've never known how to take that. Yeah, so I was going to say drag kings, and I think that that's missing from our conversations in general these days is that we've got, this RuPaul's Drag Race has transformed so much. There's so many drag queens, and everybody's grandmother likes drag now, except for of course, the haters who've decided it's terrible. But drag kings are still missing, and I find that odd. So,
I
did
do
you have?
too. And for a while after, I mean, AIDS wiped out all the great queens, um, just gone. And in their absence, drag kings rose up and took the stage. But now with a whole crop of drag queens, uh, it seems like it's flashier and the whole idea of, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this one, feminine expression, fem fem expression is look at me, look at me, look at me, just look at me. It's all about that. Uh, king, male, masculine, butch, isn't about look at me. And drag kings, I think, had to work a lot harder to come up with acts that worked. Um, okay, yeah, you're a bro. Okay, do you want to look at a bro? Particularly, I don't like to look at them in real life. Um, so that they have to work harder for an audience, and I guess they have fallen us away, and they would not appeal on a broad level on television. I'd like RuPaul to try it and prove that wrong. That would be cool. RuPaul could produce that.
I think RuPaul has been asked. I was like, even like, I love the idea of RuPaul doing sort of that special Sunday night edition, you know, from back in the old TV days of just a drag king special, right? That would be a good kind of kitschy way to even produce it or package it, etc.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't
yeah.
have to be popular with everyone, but it could be a thing that. Did you have a favorite? I every time I saw Dread, I thought Dread was just so amazing, and the whole Apple thing was just
Dread. Oh my
oh
God, Dread.
yeah.
Whatever happened to Dread?
You know, a part of me wants to say that I think they're gone. I think they died, but I could be wrong about that. I for some reason in my brain that's what I remember, and I don't remember when or how. I will check for you, but what a remarkable performer. I mean, that Apple. I'll see if I can in the links when I post these videos. I'll see if I can find any link to even a description of that if I have to write it myself. But that Apple thing, priceless. So
That's one of the things about old age that's not so good is all the dying that goes on around you. Not so good.
that's I have been I joke that as a Gen X person, I didn't feel like the women older than me talked about menopause enough, and nobody talked about the dying enough. And so trying to make people aware, like that was the shock um, of that grief. Grief becomes part of your day to day, I think, um, in a way that even losing people at a younger age, especially significant people, grandmothers and parents or whoever, you know, is that for you. But it's the piling on of losing people, the sudden heart attacks and the some of the sweetest men I grew up with and that kind of stuff. Like that's the complication. And we're still, of course, in this post-COVID moment, you know, not acknowledging the fact that we lost 1 million people. Um, and it's like nobody ever talks about it. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh, crazy.
yeah,
All
grief is
right. Now we're bringing up death and dying. My favorite topic, I swear to fucking God, because I am so much closer
uh-huh.
than I've ever been. The odds are I'm gonna die before anybody who's watching this. Okay? Anybody. Um, and my relationship with death goes way back to when I was 14 and I wanted to kill myself. And when I was 29 and wanted to kill myself. And I was 35 and then 40 and I wanted to kill myself. And then finally started coming alive uh, after my transition and started living myself and finally just owned it and going, well, I'll stay alive. That seems to be a better way. And just finding other fun things to do other than kill myself was great. But death is still there.
Mm.
Not, not you. Not you. Well, you could be the death. They do that. They do. But here's the thing about death. Here's the thing, the cool thing about death that I'm learning from. Uh, Death has got to be the moment where you lose everything. Everything's gone. You don't have any more friends, pussycats, chairs, tank tops. Honk ain't going to save you. And you just lose everything. So I've always been curious about that moment of death, that moment you actually stop living, that flash of a moment. And what's it like? And my mother always would tell me about that one. She always wondered about that one. And I thought, okay, if it's all about losing stuff, then every time you lose something, you get to rehearse for that moment of death. And now, when you get old, you start losing words, you start losing your ability to get around, you start losing your looks, you start losing your flexibility, and you can either cry about it, you can either wail and curse the gods, or you can go, huh, how about that? Look at that. I can't remember the fucking word. How about that? And it seems to me if I can get good at that, then at that moment of death, I can laugh. And that's what I want to be able to do. Um, and old age, that's what old age gives you the opportunity to practice because you lose a lot.
That is that's breathtaking, and moving. You've got tears in my eyes. Yeah, the uh, I don't know, for whatever reason. I think it's because I've always liked. I was raised a lot by my grandmother. I've always appreciated older people. I worked my first job. I delivered newspapers at an assisted living facility. So there is something about grief and aging that has always sort of been important to me. And the older I get, the more that that becomes profound, I think, because you just remember people who are gone. And so, um, even in doing this, as I mentioned to you, it was because Lynn Conway passed a week and a half ago, and I had been talking about trying to do this project for years. And I think about all the people who I would have interviewed, whether that was Les Feinberg or Lynn or Monica Roberts or the fairy that was Holly Boswell, who I adored. There are so many people. Do you remember Holly?
Holly's gone.
Oh yeah, yeah, a few years back. I mean, the only person who I'm really actual person I've ever met who I really was convinced was Faye. Honestly, she just yeah.
Oh, fuck. All right. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I that it's been a few
No,
years, so I
no,
assumed you knew.
no, I never knew. She was in Asheville, I think,
Yes.
for, yeah,
Yeah, she
for the
had that
long,
little
yeah. And I wasn't in touch with her. Okay.
we we were just making plans to go visit her little treehouse or whatever it was when she passed. So that's yeah. It's a while back before COVID, so I think I could send you that. One of the things I have been using, I don't use my blog as much anymore, but I am trying at least to make sure important, frankly, it's of an age, important obituaries get posted because we lose people. And there's so many people who, and so that there's a question for you. Who are the people? I mean, the if you had elders, I was saying to James, it's almost 6 degrees of separation, say to Magnus Hirschfeld or whatever. We're only talking about 100 years, right? So he knew Lou Sullivan and knew Steve Dane, who knew, it's like the connections to the first 20s and 30s people who did this work. And I feel like that's why I want to do this. It's like the interviews, the connections, the links in the chain, right? That disappear every time you lose a person, um, is significant. So I'm just thinking that you knew everybody.
I knew Lou Sullivan and I know Sandy Stone. Yeah. Um, Lou was a pal. He lived around the corner in San Francisco. We would bump into each other. He was a gay man and I was a lesbian. So we did not hang out, but we laughed with each other.
I was gonna say, and you were both not supposed to have happened in so many ways, right? The idea that you were not allowed to transition. You could transition to be a man, but you could not transition to a gay man. And he had a hard
No, yeah,
time, right? Finding someone who would help him transition. And if you said out loud that you were planning on dating women as a trans woman, you also were not allowed.
I did. And several doctors turned me down. And I swear to God, I'm not making this next thing up. There was an office that dealt with transsexuals and as part of their practice. And there was a surgeon and a urologist. And the surgeon's name, all right, it's Dr. Razor and Dr. Wiener.
Come on.
Where to God. I used that in my play Hidden Agenda, Razor and Wiener, general surgery, Marx Brothers routine. But I did that because of them. They
Oh,
were in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania.
King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Wow. Okay. So that's like the neck of the woods that my family is from. So we're one side of my family. So
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, wow. Dr. Razor and Dr. Wiener. I had a friend years ago who had an OBGYN whose name was Handworker. And you just go, come on, that's hilarious. That's
What other profession would you go into?
a shoe in.
Sure. Sure.
That's beautiful. Anyway, what was I going to ask you to? So while we're on the, I feel like we've done our vaudevillian escape valve. But you've also done amazing work from talking about death and grief in particular. But um, you have also done so much work in terms of suicide prevention, and I think that has become more important, slightly different than it used to be. And I remember you saying that after the cancer scare, you were like, "Oh, living is good." That it was a very change in your outlook um, at the time, and I think that's still a difficulty. I had a young come to me who was on all kinds of meds, and they said, "Well, why do you keep going?" And I said, "Well, you." And she just looked at me, and I said, "Yeah, it's to keep the youngs who are like, it's hard. It's hard. It's like the idea of being queer in the world, being a depressive in the world, whatever reasons we want to give it, is that I think when people are struggling with uh, suicidal ideation, it's hard. So the in talking to this younger person, I realized I was like, it used to be because my parents were alive and I couldn't do that to them, but they're both gone now, and I had to come up with a new reason. So my new reason um, is that there are too many youngs who have too much beauty and power and awesomeness. And if there's anything I'm here to do, it's to do all the things. Fight it, live despite them.
I have a similar thing. Let me be the New Yorker now and come into this and interrupt you. Um, I came out with a book in 2006 called Hello, Cruel World: 101 Alternatives to Suicide for Teens, Freaks, and Other Outlaws. This is because after 9/11, I've been touring a lot and gender this, gender that, gender this, gender that. But I've started to see more and more suicides, talk about suicides on college campuses, more and more and more. And I was researching suicide prevention. You said I'm into suicide prevention. I don't see it that way. Um, because all the books I found on suicide prevention boil down to be good. And then they would proceed to tell you how to be good. And if you were good, you would want to live and there. So live this way and you won't have to worry about suicide. Fuck, fuck, fuck. That's not gonna, that wouldn't stop me. Um, and I had a copy of an old book, a mimeographed book, um, by Thule Kupferberg called "1,001 Ways to Live Without Working." And you opened it up, and it would be like, find a $10 bill in a toilet, and you're the only public toilet, and you're the only one brave enough to fish it out. Find a $20 bill in a public toilet, and you're the only one brave enough to fish it out. Find a $50 bill in a public toilet, on and on and on. These just crazy, crazy things. By the time you got like halfway through, a page, you were just howling, and the fact that you were out of work wasn't depressing you anymore. So
Beautiful.
it gave me the idea of 101 alternatives to suicide, period. And I started making these funny things up. And then they started to become real things, the things I used to instead of killing myself. And that book came out, and I'm really, really glad I wrote that book. Of all the books I wrote, I'm the gladdest about that. And my publisher approached me about a year ago and said, would you be interested in doing a second edition? Yeah, yeah, I would, because the landscape for trying to stay alive in the world has changed, because the predominant mode of life in the world has shifted into polarization. And you're with us or you're against us. You're one of us or you're not. And you're real or you're fake. And this is a whole new force pressuring people to kill themselves. And I hadn't addressed that in the first edition. So now there are 20 new alternatives, um, that deal primarily with how to get out of a us versus them thing where you're the them and life ain't so good because of it. Um, that situation. And I'm really glad that Seven Stories Press is putting that out. It'll be out in 2025. It's all done. It's now being laid out. I'm excited.
I mean, I've probably given out 20 copies of that book since came out. I always find people, I recommend it on the regular because I think I mean, your whole balance of hearts and skull and crossbones, right? Hearts and death. Um, Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, and I appreciate as well the check on suicide prevention because you're right. I mean, they just tell you to be better. And it's like when you're depressed, you have no energy to like start eating healthy or whatever. I've always had friends, and I know you were diagnosed with lung cancer who say, you know, you have to quit smoking. And I said, if I'd quit smoking, I'd have jumped off a bridge, so let's keep in mind that there is an extension to my life because of smoking that will also ultimately shorten it, no doubt. Right. So, um, but these are choices. There's so much of this. And it still ends up being this like, are you a good person? Are you a moral person? And it's like, that's not relevant. It's
No,
not.
no,
Yeah.
no. Morality. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching, about throw morals out the window and you'll be a happier person. Oh, fuck. I wait, what? No, what? And it took me years and years and years to realize that morality, what we call morality, is a series of good and bad behavior, of just a list of things. This is good, this is bad. And just like the binary of gender, it's not quite true. And if you insist that it is, more people are going to kill themselves. So, no idea where I was going with that one.
Well, it's ongoing. I mean, the most punk rock thing in the world to do is live despite them, right? So I try to keep that in mind. But
Oh, that's good.
um, especially for the people who don't want you around. I mean, realistically, I think as part of communities that are hated in lots of corners of the world, that can be that us versus them. That's I was thinking there's so many versions of us versus them, but certainly as any of us have seen working with social media, like every time anyone puts up a pride flag, it's like the hateful comments just pour in. And yeah, it's still a challenge, and it's a challenge for younger people and older people um, as well. I am glad that you are an island on an island. I love the idea of that. That's like a I'm writing a fairy tale in my head already about you going to your island in an island.
I'm sorry. This is Barbara.
Okay. I'll pause the recording.
Oh, I sent